I thought I knew what betrayal felt like, until that day. A day that was supposed to be filled with laughter, celebration, and love. A day I had spent weeks planning, making sure everything was perfect for my best friend. But in a single moment, with just a few words, she shattered everything. My husband, my marriage, my trust. It all hung in the air as she smiled, waiting for the chaos to unfold. And the worst part? She thought it was funny. But what started as a twisted joke quickly turned into something much darker. If only I had seen the warning signs sooner. Would it have changed anything? You know that kind of friendship where you think nothing could ever break it? That was me and Sarah. We met in college, bonded over music, late-night study sessions, and our shared love for spontaneous road trips. It was the kind of friendship that felt unshakable, the type where you'd trust the other person with your deepest secrets. Over the years, despite our careers pulling us in different directions, me diving headfirst into law and Sarah exploring social media, we always made time for each other. Weekends were sacred, filled with laughter, cocktails, and endless stories. Looking back, I should have noticed the little cracks forming, the subtle shifts in her behavior, the way she started craving attention, always reaching for the most dramatic way to tell a story. But I ignored it, chalking it up to her influencer lifestyle. After all, we were still those inseparable best friends who shared everything. Or so I thought. When she told me she was pregnant, I felt nothing but joy. Organizing her baby shower was an honor. I poured my heart into every detail, making sure it would be perfect for her. The day of the shower arrived, and everything looked stunning. Yellow decorations, her favorite color, adorned the room, and guests from our past filled the space, reminiscing about old times. As I watched Sarah glowing in her dress, I felt a deep sense of pride. She was about to start a new chapter, and I was right by her side. That's what best friends do. But something about her smile that day felt different. Almost too perfect, too rehearsed. Like she was savoring a secret that no one else knew. And then, just when everything seemed picture perfect, Sarah stood up to speak. The room quieted. She took a deep breath, looked around, and what she said next? It shattered everything. I still remember the night I met Michael like it was yesterday. It was one of those casual girls' nights out with Sarah, just another evening of drinks and laughter until I saw him. He was at the bar with his friends, and for some reason, my eyes kept drifting back to him. Turns out Sarah had noticed too, because she was the one who nudged me toward him. "Go talk to him," she had laughed, giving me a little push. And just like that, my life changed. Michael was charming, kind, and had this effortless way of making me feel special. Fast forward a few years, and we were married. 5 years of what I thought was a solid, loving relationship. We weren't just partners. We were best friends, a team. Sure, we had our struggles, especially with infertility. It was something we battled together. Sarah knew about it, of course. She had been my shoulder to cry on through every failed attempt, every disappointing doctor's visit. She was there when I grieved the idea that I might never have children. And through it all, Michael had been my rock. Looking back, I realized that Michael and Sarah had naturally formed a friendship over the years. It made sense. They were both important parts of my life. Mark, Sarah's husband, also became close to Michael. The four of us had spent countless evenings together, double dates filled with inside jokes and shared experiences. It never crossed my mind that there could be anything more than that. After all, we were happy, weren't we? But that night at the baby shower, as Sarah locked eyes with my husband just before making her announcement, something in my gut twisted. It was a feeling I couldn't explain at the time, but one that would soon make perfect sense. When Sarah told me she was pregnant, I was ecstatic. After everything we had been through together, this felt like a moment to celebrate. I knew how much she had wanted this, and despite my own struggles, I couldn't help but feel genuinely happy for her. She deserved this joy, and I was honored. When she asked me to plan her baby shower, I poured myself into it, wanting every detail to be perfect. After all, she was my best friend. We picked a theme together, yellow, her favorite color. I coordinated everything, the decorations, the catering, even the playlist to match the warm, cheerful atmosphere I envisioned. I made calls, sent invitations, and made sure every tiny detail was flawless. I wanted Sarah to feel special, to have a moment she'd never forget. And in some twisted way, she certainly got that. The day of the shower was beautiful. Friends we hadn't seen in years gathered to celebrate. There was laughter, reminiscing, and even a few happy tears. Watching Sarah float around the room in her yellow dress, accepting compliments and gifts, I felt proud of what I had done for her. I had given her this perfect moment. She looked so at ease, so radiant. But there was something else in her eyes, something I couldn't quite place. Then she stood up, cleared her throat, and called for everyone's attention. I smiled, expecting a sweet speech about the baby, about friendship. But when the words left her lips, my entire world tilted on its axis. The room went silent. Every conversation, every laugh, every clinking glass came to an abrupt stop as Sarah spoke. "I have someone very special to thank for this baby," she said, her eyes scanning the crowd before landing on me, then shifting to Michael. My stomach tightened. Something felt off. I glanced at my husband, but he looked just as confused as I was. And then she said it. "The father of my baby is Michael." The words hit me like a slap. I felt my heart hammer against my ribs, my breath caught in my throat. There had to be some mistake, some twisted joke. But Sarah wasn't laughing. The air in the room thickened, eyes darting between me, Michael, and her. I searched my husband's face for answers, but he looked as horrified as I felt. He squeezed my hand under the table, his grip firm, but it did nothing to stop the spinning in my head. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. It was like time had frozen, locking us in this sick, nightmarish moment. My mind raced, trying to process what was happening. Was she serious? Was this real? 100 different emotions hit me all at once. Confusion, betrayal, disbelief. I could feel the weight of every gaze in the room, burning into me like hot iron. And then, just as my vision blurred with tears, Sarah let out a laugh. Loud, exaggerated, theatrical. "I'm kidding! It was just a prank for Instagram." The tension shattered, but the damage was done. Because while some guests chuckled nervously, I could see the truth in Mark's eyes. He wasn't laughing, and neither was Michael. My brain struggled to catch up. A prank? That's what she called this? My hands were still shaking, my heart pounding so loudly I could barely hear the murmurs of guests processing what had just happened. Sarah, still beaming, waved at the hidden cameras she had set up around the room. "Gotcha, right?" She laughed, nudging Mark playfully. But he wasn't smiling. Neither was Michael. And I felt like I had just been shoved off a cliff with no warning. I wanted to scream, to demand an explanation, but I couldn't find my voice. All I could do was stare at her, at the woman I had considered my sister, wondering how she thought this was funny. Did she forget about my struggles? Did she forget how painful it was for me to accept that I might never have children? And yet, here she was, turning my deepest wound into content for her followers. Michael let go of my hand and ran a hand through his hair, exhaling sharply. I could see the frustration on his face, the same disbelief I was feeling. Some guests laughed awkwardly, unsure if they were supposed to find this amusing or be horrified. But Mark? His face was stone cold, his jaw clenched so tightly I thought he might snap. He stepped closer to Sarah, lowering his voice, but I still heard it. "What the hell is wrong with you?" Sarah rolled her eyes. "It was just a joke. Relax," she said, still grinning. But something shifted in the air. The celebration was tainted now, an unspoken tension clinging to every second that passed. And deep down, I knew this wasn't over, not by a long shot. I could feel the heat rising in my chest, a mix of humiliation and anger burning through me. I wanted to believe this was just some poorly thought-out joke, that Sarah had simply miscalculated how inappropriate it was. But the more I replayed it in my head, the more I realized this wasn't just a prank. This was cruel. And worst of all, she didn't even seem to care. I could feel my nails digging into my palm as I fought the urge to snap. This was supposed to be her special day, but all I wanted was to walk out that door and never look back. Michael hadn't said a word, but I could see it. His discomfort, the way he avoided everyone's stares. He wasn't the kind of man who liked attention, and now, thanks to Sarah, he was at the center of a scandal that didn't even exist. His face was red, his hands clenched into fists under the table. When he leaned toward me and whispered, "I need to get out of here," I didn't blame him. But if we left now, we'd make it obvious just how much this had affected us. And Sarah? She was still enjoying every second of it. Mark was another story. He stood frozen, his face dark with frustration. "You humiliated me," he finally said, his voice low and sharp. For the first time, Sarah's smile faltered. "It was just a joke," she repeated, but this time it sounded weaker, like she knew she had miscalculated. The party continued around us, but it wasn't the same. Guests whispered, exchanged glances, unsure of how to react. The light-hearted atmosphere was gone, replaced by an awkward, suffocating silence. I had spent weeks planning this shower, making sure it was everything she wanted. But now? All I wanted was to get out of there, to escape this nightmare she had turned it into. I glanced at Mark, at the way his fists clenched at his sides. Something told me that this wasn't just going to blow over. Mark's expression darkened, with every second that passed. The room was still buzzing with uneasy murmurs, but his focus was solely on Sarah. "You think this is funny?" he asked, his voice dangerously low. I had never seen him like this before. Normally he was calm, the kind of guy who shrugged things off. But not this. Not today. Sarah laughed nervously, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. "Come on. Mark, it was just a joke. No harm done." But there was harm done, and everyone knew it. Mark's hands curled into fists at his sides before he exhaled sharply, shaking his head. "You embarrassed me. You embarrassed them. And for what? A few likes on Instagram?" His words hit her like a slap, and for the first time, I saw something flicker in Sarah's eyes. Panic. She glanced around as if realizing for the first time that no one was on her side. No one was laughing with her. I felt a strange mix of emotions, shock, pity, and something I couldn't quite name. This was her husband, the man who had supported her, defended her, built a life with her. And now, in front of everyone, he was done. Completely, utterly done. "I can't do this," Mark muttered, rubbing a hand down his face. Then, without another word, he turned and walked toward the door. Sarah gasped, reaching for him, but he pulled away. "Mark, wait," she called, but he didn't stop. He didn't even look back, and just like that, the party was officially over. I sat there watching my best friend as realization dawned on her. She had taken it too far, and now she was facing the consequences. But even then, I had no idea just how much worse things would get. The fallout from that night was immediate. Mark didn't come home. Instead, he sent Sarah a short message telling her he needed space. She called him, repeatedly, but he ignored every attempt. And me? I was done playing the role of the loyal best friend. I needed space too. After everything she had put me through, I couldn't just pretend things were fine. But Sarah? She wasn't having it. The next morning, my phone blew up with messages. At first, she played the victim, telling me how overwhelmed she was, how pregnancy hormones had made her do something stupid. But when I didn't respond right away, her tone changed. Suddenly, I was the bad guy. "I can't believe you just abandoned me like this," she wrote. "I need you now more than ever." As if she hadn't humiliated me the night before. As if she hadn't crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. Michael, on the other hand, was furious. "She's manipulating you," he said when I showed him the messages. And he was right. Deep down, I knew it. But it still hurt. This was the person I had trusted for years, the friend I had shared everything with. And now she was acting like I was the one who had done something wrong. She even asked me to take her to a doctor's appointment, as if nothing had happened. I stared at my phone, my fingers hovering over the screen. Part of me wanted to reply, to give her one last chance. But then I remembered how she had laughed when she shattered my world, how she had made a joke out of my pain. And suddenly I realized I didn't owe her anything. At first I thought she'd back off, maybe reflect, maybe realize just how badly she had messed up. But I underestimated just how far Sarah was willing to go. When I stopped responding, the messages got nastier. She accused me of being jealous of her pregnancy, of never truly being happy for her. And when that didn't work, she turned her anger toward Michael. One night, Michael came home from work, his face tight with frustration. "You're not going to believe this," he said, handing me his phone. My stomach dropped. It was a long, venomous message from Sarah, filled with insults, accusations, and something so vile it made my skin crawl. She blamed him for destroying our friendship, even had the nerve to call him less of a man because we hadn't been able to have kids. My hands shook as I read it. This wasn't just a friend lashing out. This was cruel, deliberate, unforgivable. Mark wasn't spared either. From what Michael told me, he had been receiving the same kind of treatment. But Mark? He was done playing her games. He had already met with a divorce lawyer, gathering every message, every email, every piece of proof that Sarah was unraveling. She must have sensed it too, because she took things even further, accusing him of being interested in me. I nearly laughed at how ridiculous it was. But there was nothing funny about how desperate she was becoming. It was like watching a car crash in slow motion. The person I had called my best friend for over a decade was self-destructing, and she wanted to take everyone down with her. But if she thought I was going to let her drag me back into the mess she had created, she was dead wrong. Sarah's downfall was inevitable. Mark went through with the divorce, presenting all the messages, emails, and evidence of her erratic behavior. There was no way she could talk her way out of it. Legally, they had to work out co-parenting arrangements, but emotionally, Mark was done. He barely spoke to her beyond what was necessary for the baby. And as for me, I made my decision too. I was done letting her drag me back into her chaos. Without Mark's financial support and with her social media following dwindling, likely. Because of the way people saw through her drama, Sarah had no choice but to move back in with her parents. Friends we once shared distanced themselves, tired of her toxicity. And even though part of me still remembered the good times, I knew that version of Sarah no longer existed. If she ever did. She tried reaching out again, but this time I didn't even open the messages. I had nothing left to say. Michael and I focused on our marriage, on healing from the mess she had created. And honestly, we were stronger than ever. We had gone through something awful together, but we had come out on the other side. Together. While Sarah spiraled, we thrived. And for the first time in a long time, I felt peace. Maybe Sarah would change. Maybe she'd finally realized the damage she had done. But that was no longer my problem. I had spent years being a good friend to her, always forgiving, always understanding. But now I was choosing myself, and it felt damn good.
Keep watching our stories by clicking on one of the videos that appear on the screen, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications to be alerted about new videos. See you next time.